Consciousness does not end in death. It expands into the cosmos.
You're about to hear a forbidden truth. Imagine there existed a hidden recording capable of shaking the foundations of our understanding of life and death. This interview, silenced by the fear and distrust of its time, carries a message that was censored for decades, not because it was crazy, but because it threatened everything we take for real. Now, for the first time, you'll have the unique chance to discover what even Albert Einstein himself dared to hide from the world. It all began in the dimness, in the spring of 1943, when the echo of war was barely fading from the streets and the air seemed charged with untold mysteries. Inside an old Princeton residence, locked away until now, lay a reliquary of knowledge, a tape corroded by time, a notebook covered in symbols you won't find in any conventional treatise, and the testimony of a night history tried to bury. That manuscript, written after what Einstein himself described as an experience that defied all logic, reveals that there are energies, frequencies, and realities that escape any equation. On this channel, we're not going to treat death as a simple end. Here, we explore its hidden field. If there was a scientist who managed to see beyond the visible universe, it was Einstein, and his barely whispered words brushed the edge of the forbidden. But what if everything you were taught about life and death was just a limited version of a much bigger truth? You've been told the soul is a vague concept, a comforting idea to explain the inexplicable. You've been led to think that after the last breath, there is only emptiness, nothing, oblivion. And yet, in that notebook, Einstein wrote what no one dared read in public: "We are more than matter. Our souls vibrate at frequencies that even the most advanced instruments can't pick up. There's a subtle web of energy, a field where consciousness persists and evolves after physical silence." Many current scientists, like Rupert Sheldrake, have debated memory and morphic fields. Einstein went much further. He left personal evidence, a diary of his encounter with the eternal. Step by step, let me guide you through this revelation. Imagine the scene. A lamp barely lights the face of the man who moved the fundamental pieces of physics, now ready to speak like never before. He was no longer the man of formulas. He was the witness of a primordial vibration, a perpetual note that holds the universe and survives matter. In that intimate confession, Einstein didn't talk about particles, but about consciousness as the only unchangeable field, the energy that crosses all known limits, the visible, the invisible, and the eternal. The mistake of science, he said, is not what it seeks, but what it refuses to look at. How far does your own ability to look beyond go? Now think how this unpublished knowledge could change you today. For most people, death is still the greatest enemy, the unsolved enigma. But if you accept the existence of this field of consciousness, that uninterrupted vibration Einstein confirmed feeling in his own flesh, your perception changes. Anguish turns into curiosity. You understand that life doesn't end but expands, that the soul doesn't disappear but integrates new frequencies and merges with an unexplored reality. You can start right now to pay attention to your own energy states, to notice signs, to look for resonance in your thoughts and in the mysteries of your dreams. This vision, forbidden for decades, can be your ultimate guide. Few have heard this unpublished account. It's knowledge carefully guarded because it can be as liberating as it is dangerous for those who aren't ready. But you're here, and that already makes a difference. Don't let someone else decide how far you can think, feel, or explore. Dive deeper. Question. Seek. What if today is the first day you dare to look at the veil between life and death without fear? That's what changes everything. From now on, only you decide what to do with this secret. But I warn you, there's an even more disturbing question at the end of all this, a doubt that even Einstein didn't fully resolve. Are you ready to discover it in our next meeting? Have you ever wondered if what we call death is really the end? That question, the oldest and deepest humans have asked, shook that secret meeting with Albert Einstein. Don't expect an easy answer, because he didn't speak from faith or myth, but from a certainty born of experience. He didn't say, "I believe," he said, "At my age, I prefer to know," and that difference is more powerful than you imagine. As he looked at the cloudy sky, the stars barely visible, Einstein seemed to be contemplating a reality few have access to. Then he turned his determined gaze and placed his hands on a very particular notebook, with pages containing symbols and formulas that transcended the common language of science. Everything you need is here, but don't expect immediate answers. The key is in the question. That invitation is a direct call to you. Don't settle for superficial knowledge. Dig into the questions that truly matter. Conventional science has taught us to trust only what is visible, what is measurable. But what about what escapes measurement? The soul? Einstein rejected that word for being too loaded with false beliefs and dogmas. Instead, he spoke of consciousness, not a vague idea, but a tangible energy, a frequency he detected clearly and distinctly. Consciousness is like a wave in the sea. While we exist in the body, that wave has shape and direction. But when the body dies, that wave does not disappear. It returns to the ocean, to the great universal field of energy it never stopped being part of. This concept, which challenges classical understanding, is supported by contemporary thinkers like David Chalmers, a noted philosopher of mind, who treats consciousness as a fundamental phenomenon of the cosmos, something that cannot be reduced to matter or brain electricity. Einstein reached a similar conclusion long before, pointing out that consciousness is not generated by the brain, but functions like an antenna, a receiver of something much broader. When the receiver shuts off, the signal, that invisible force, keeps existing. On that night, marked by an approaching storm over the Princeton campus, Einstein revealed that he had studied for years the hidden weave of the universe, discovering connections that don't stick to time or space. Quantum entanglement, the unified field, and the resonance of the vacuum pointed to a single message. Consciousness is non-local. It's beyond the physical reality we perceive. This means death doesn't destroy that field. It only changes the way we relate to it. Imagine what that implies for you. If consciousness is eternal and transcends the body, your fears about death start to lose weight. You're not alone or lost in nothingness. There is an energetic continuity, an invisible flow we're all immersed in, and every thought, feeling, or vibration you cultivate now influences that sacred space. By understanding this, you can start caring for your frequency, protecting your energy, and raising your reality to connect with that eternal field that Einstein, the greatest intellectual who pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, described with such conviction. This is knowledge reserved for few, for those willing to question the limits of traditional science and open to the unknown without fear. It's no coincidence you're here hearing this now. The secret barely emerging from the shadows can awaken a deep, definitive transformation in you. But there's more. If consciousness endures, what happens to those who've departed? In what frequency or form do they continue interacting with us? And if this is true, how can we tune into that greater reality to find peace and guidance in our daily lives? The answer to these questions is the next step of this revelation. Stay tuned, because what you'll discover can completely change your relationship with death and with life itself. You can't imagine the disbelief that flooded the journalist at that moment. How could Einstein be so sure, so firm in those claims? The answer was simple and powerful, because he had felt it. He didn't just intuit it, he had seen it reflected in equations he never published, hidden even behind the famous formula E equals mc squared, which is really just the surface of a much deeper mystery. There exists another energy, more subtle and essential, the energy of consciousness. When the inevitable question came up, what happens to that energy after death? Einstein's gaze grew intense, as if piercing the veil of time and space. It depends, he said. Not all consciousnesses follow the same path. Some return, others cling to this plane, and others ascend to higher levels. It's not the automatic reincarnation many imagine. It's a conscious choice, an evolutionary process. Consciousness keeps learning, exploring new horizons until it's ready to return to its origin or to be freed from the cycle. Think about that for a few seconds. It's different from what most accept. This concept, which seems to tangle science and spirituality, was later supported by important figures like Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist who showed that consciousness influences matter and our biology, and that awakening to this truth radically changes how you live and die. That night, Einstein rose slowly and walked to the window, looking out at a stormy sky as if searching for answers beyond what his eyes could reach. Then, in a slow voice, almost a whisper that crossed time, he said, "We are not bodies that have a soul. We are souls that have had the experience of a body. Death is simply the closing of a chapter, not the end of the book." The weight of those words sank deep into the journalist. Everything he believed about the end began to turn into open questions. It was no longer time for more questions. It was time to listen and open the heart to the unknown. That revelation had no return. Whoever listened would no longer be the same. Einstein returned to his seat and, with a look full of unwavering truth, explained how the whole world had reduced him to relativity, to the speed of light, to space and time. But almost no one asked him, what's the point of understanding time if we don't understand the observer of time? Because without that observer, that consciousness, there is no time, no space, not even reality itself. It's like a movie without a viewer, just a reel without meaning, an empty void without purpose. This idea isn't just philosophical. It's something quantum physics has begun to accept, half-heartedly. Einstein himself approached relativity with a new look. Time is not absolute or linear. It curves, stretches, and alters according to speed and gravity, always depending on who observes it. Simply put, reality isn't fixed. It's shaped by perception. You hold in your hands the key to understand this unexplored truth. Time is an illusion created by consciousness, which is the only real and eternal truth because it's outside time. We're not travelers on a timeline. Time folds before our perception, revealing that eternity and the essence of being reside in that consciousness that observes everything. To illustrate that idea, Einstein used a powerful image. Imagine a train traveling at the speed of light. For someone riding inside, time stops completely. Not a second passes. But for someone watching from outside, years could go by. Both perspectives are true, depending on the frame of reference. What remains constant in both is that silent witness, the consciousness that exists beyond body and time. That consciousness is more fundamental than any particle or matter you can imagine. It doesn't arise from the brain, it doesn't come from matter, it precedes everything. The universe itself, with all its vastness and mystery, emerges as a reflection, a manifestation of consciousness. Although it sounds like a concept from ancient Eastern philosophies, today we find physics getting close to this idea, perhaps without saying it openly, through phenomena like quantum entanglement. On the blackboard, Einstein chalked two words that combined astonishing science with mystery: quantum entanglement. Two particles can separate by millions of miles, yet remain connected instantly, responding to each other faster than any known signal. How does that happen? Science still has no definitive answer. This phenomenon challenges the materialist model because it reveals that beneath the visible, there is a field of energy and consciousness that connects everything, a single field that unites reality. Now you must ask yourself, if this field exists, what role do you play in this invisible network? How does this affect your daily life? They are draining your energy at every moment without you noticing. And you need to learn to protect your frequency to connect with your true self, to tune into that eternal and sacred field Einstein pointed to. There is a simple method to block the interferences that pull you away from this truth, and here, on this journey, you'll soon discover it. Remember, very few have access to this revelation. Censorship and fear have kept this knowledge buried, but you have the key now. The reality you know is about to expand, and with it, your consciousness. But before we keep exploring, there's only one question left. Are you willing to leave behind your old certainties and open up to a universe where death isn't the end, but just a doorway to a much vaster existence? There are secrets hidden not for lack of evidence, but for fear of changing how people perceive what we think is solid and real. Imagine now that the wall separating you from others is nothing but a deep illusion. The famous connection between particles, that phenomenon called quantum entanglement, is just a window to a greater truth. Both particles, though separated by space, share a common consciousness. That consciousness is the true invisible fabric that binds everything. Separation, as we feel it, is only appearance. Everything is born from a single field of energy and consciousness that flows through all that exists. At that moment, the journalist could only stare, absorbed, at the idea written on the blackboard. "Professor, if this is true, then we aren't separated from anything," he said in a tone mixed with wonder and doubt. Einstein smiled, pleased. "Exactly. We are not separated," he affirmed gently. "That's why when the body dies, it's not the end, but merely the fading of that illusion of separation. Consciousness returns to its original state, where neither time nor space exist. It is pure freedom." A gust of wind hit the window hard. The storm that had been approaching all night finally burst outside. But inside that small room, everything was calm. Einstein took his seat again, now with a warmer, almost human tone. "When I was young, I thought discovering the laws of the universe would be my greatest prize. But over time, I understood that the greatest mystery isn't in the stars or in atoms, but here." He touched his chest with reverence. "In that silent spark that observes, that feels and that loves, in that which can never be measured, but everyone experiences." The journalist lowered his gaze, feeling something stir deep inside. "If we finally manage to unite science and consciousness," he whispered to himself, "the universe will stop being a mystery and become a mirror." Outside, the rain intensified, beating against the panes, and the wind howled through the trees, as if the cosmos wanted to take part in that sacred conversation. Silence reigned inside. The journalist put down his pen and looked at him, still stunned. He felt he was about to ask a question others fear to voice, but that everyone carries inside. "Professor, if consciousness transcends time and space, if our essence doesn't die but transforms, tell me, do you believe in God?" Einstein was silent for a few seconds. He crossed his hands on the desk and fixed his gaze at a distant point, as if searching in the deepest part of himself. Finally, he looked up with the serenity of someone who's walked a long road. His look had no arrogance or cold certainties, but respect and genuine humility. "It depends on what you mean by God." The journalist said nothing, wisely waiting for the development of that answer. Einstein continued, "If you ask me whether I believe in an old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud, judging and rewarding each being, the answer is no. That anthropomorphic, jealous, vengeful God is only a human creation." He paused, weighing each word. "But if you understand God as an intelligence that sustains the order of the universe, a universal consciousness present in every particle, in every atom, in every thought, then yes, I believe in God. I have felt it." The journalist squinted, curious and captivated. "You've felt it?" he asked. Einstein nodded, not with physical senses, but with a deep intuition that surfaces in moments when everything seems chaotic. When the equations don't fit, suddenly a light is born, an understanding that doesn't come from me, but through me, as if the universe whispered a secret. That is God. He leaned forward slightly, voice almost reverent. God isn't an external being. God is the ocean of which we are drops. God isn't someone watching you from outside, but that which within you observes. A shiver ran through the journalist, not of fear, but of inner resonance. God isn't a separate creator. God is the universe, and at the same time, beyond it. It's the principle and the end, the totality that encompasses everything. Einstein stood and walked to a bookshelf. He pulled out a small book by Baruch Spinoza and held it in his hands. Spinoza came closest to this truth. For him, God and nature were one, and he was condemned for that view. But he was right. He returned to his seat, gently caressing the pages. Atoms obey patterns, galaxies spin with immutable precision, life repeats with intelligence in hundreds of forms. And yet, do we dare say all this is the fruit of chance? No. Nothing comes from nothing. Everything arises from consciousness. That consciousness is what some call God. The journalist watched, his heart beating fast, aware that this was neither religion nor pure science. It was a lived truth that transcended any intellectual box. But one question lingered in the air. If this reality exists, why does science deny it? Why reject this idea of a higher order that transcends matter? Einstein sighed deeply. His face showed the wounds of decades battling skepticism. Because modern science fell in love with reason and forgot wisdom, it became arrogant and closed its doors to the invisible, to the sacred. His voice dropped to a whisper. But truth can never be contained by those who fear to look beyond. Now you stand before that threshold. Knowing that consciousness is the foundation of everything changes the energy around you. They are draining your light, your frequency, and you must learn to protect it. The journey is just beginning, and what follows is unique, forbidden knowledge with the power to transform your reality forever. Are you willing to keep exploring? Because there's an even deeper mystery hidden behind this truth, ready to be discovered. There is a deep error that has shaped our way of understanding reality, believing that everything that can't be measured doesn't exist. That's the trap we've fallen into. Many religions, in their hunger for control, clung to rigid dogmas and erected power structures, proclaiming their truths as absolute laws. But God doesn't fit in books, nor is limited to printed words. God transcends any definition. Einstein closed his notebook gently, his gaze now full of unshakable calm. What I try to tell you is simple. God isn't proven, God is experienced. Not with the eyes, but with the soul. When you're silent, when you love with an open heart, when you understand without knowing why, there it is. The journalist wrote one single word in his notebook, as if it were a sacred mantra: unity. Einstein noticed it and gave a conspiratorial smile. That's the key. As long as we keep seeing ourselves as separate, from others, from the planet, from the universe, we'll live imprisoned by illusion. But when we remember we're part of the whole, then we truly wake up. He leaned back in the chair, as if releasing a burden he had carried for decades. I've spent my whole life searching for a unified theory, an invisible thread that connected gravity, electromagnetism, energy, and matter. Today I know that thread is consciousness. It's the subtle, eternal fabric that binds it all. The storm outside began to subside. The journalist felt a different calm arrive, not because he had all the answers, but because, for the first time, he understood which questions to ask. "Professor, what if the world isn't ready for this truth?" he asked with some doubt. Einstein looked at him with infinite tenderness. "Then we will wait. Truth doesn't need to be imposed. It just needs to be remembered." His voice dropped to an almost intimate murmur. God is the silence between your thoughts, the spark in your eyes when you love, the invisible breath that gives life to all that is. The air in that study grew lighter, as if that confession released a held energy. The journalist closed his notebook, thinking the night had come to an end. But Einstein surprised him once more. "There's still something you must know." His voice turned grave, firm. The journalist opened his notebook again, expectant. "What comes after death isn't a single identical destination for everyone," Einstein began slowly. "Each consciousness goes through a different journey. There are no final judgments or eternal punishments, but there are consequences. There is resonance." The journalist raised his gaze, intrigued. "Resonance?" "Exactly," Einstein continued, staring at an invisible point. "Everything we are, everything we feel and do, leaves a vibratory trace that defines our path after the physical body. Consciousnesses trapped in fear, power, or greed remain in the dense layers of reality, repeating cycles, clinging to shadows of the past. But those who live seeking truth, cultivating love and compassion, ascend toward the origin and eventually free themselves." The journalist wrote slowly, without hurry. "There is no punishment, only vibration." "Exactly," Einstein nodded. "Heaven and hell are not places, but states of energy. And the beautiful thing is, we're not trapped, we can change, opt for a different vibration." "So reincarnation exists?" the journalist dared to ask. Einstein smiled gently. "Yes, but not as many believe. It's not automatic, nor a reward or a punishment. It's a possibility that emerges from a level of consciousness we usually ignore in this life. Who chooses?" The question pulsed strongly. "You do," Einstein said. But not you as this name or body, but you as the eternal essence, that spark that transcends the flesh. There are lessons that can only be understood by incarnating, by feeling with the heart, with the soul. The journalist fell silent, digesting the weight of those words. Einstein recounted having read testimonies of children who remember past lives with precise details that don't fit common explanations.